We were looking for a subject that would be interesting of itself, but also would be an interesting challenge for the GH5S. And we wanted to create an intimate portrait of someone at work, someone doing something different. So we thought actually a blacksmith would tick all of those boxes. And Philip was kind enough to let us into his forge.
It's quite a small area we're working in, and that's quite a good test of any camera, because can you get it into tight spaces? Can we work around a small area with very hot things in it? Sometimes with large cameras, they get in the way. You can't physically put the camera where you want it to be. This is a really nice form factor for getting in there, but not being too intrusive. You can get the shots without ruining the shot.
One of the big challenges of filming in a forge is you've got a large dynamic range. You've got a bright fire once the forge is lit, but actually as a workshop, it's a dark place. So actually it was a really good test for the GH5S, how it was going to cope with those problems. When you see a red hot piece of metal coming into view, there are times when it actually lights up the shot that you're doing or lights up someone's face. So it was fascinating to see how the camera was going to cope with that.
We used a range of tools, if you like, sliders and tripods, to give a sense of movement. And having such a small form factor that the GH5S gives us allows a small movement to look much larger than it is, because you can get closer to objects. You can make things look as though they're moving much further than they really are. We used a selection of different lenses, Fuji zooms, the MK zooms, and we used some Canon lenses as well. The Canon lenses with a speed booster give you a sensor size which you'd think is much bigger than a Micro Four Thirds. But what this shows is how adaptable the Micro Four Thirds sensor is. You can use it with almost any sort of lens, and it just looks great. A really impressive thing about the Panasonic GH5S is obviously the low light ability. But it's easy to think that if you've got a camera that's really good in low light, you don't need to use light. That's not the point. The point for me was that you can be more subtle with the light. If you have a camera that's really good in low light, you don't have to use so much. And in a small space like a forge, if you're using too much light, it's bouncing around all over the place. You spend all day trying to control the light you're putting in, rather than artistically using small amounts of light, and that's what the GH5S allows you to do. We tried a selection of different shots at different resolutions and different frame rates, just to see what would work and what doesn't. 4K at 10-bit, 422, is full professional quality. That's as good as any large camera. And then we also tried 240 frames at 1920. You have to drop down to 8-bit for that, but I thought it still looked pretty good.
I think a lot of times people will be using the GH5S as a B camera to complement other equipment, and I think that's going to work really well. We've put it through a big test today, and it's worked really hard in testing conditions.
When I first saw the specs for the Panasonic GH5S, I thought it would be a really good B camera, but the more I use it, the more I think, actually, this is a good A camera. I'd rather have two of these in my kit than a big camera and a little one. That really surprised me. We did some shots today with Philip and the forge on a wide lens, where we're drifting round slowly, and he's lit solely by the light from outside the window. And I was really impressed with how filmic it looked. The detail in the shadows and the number of shades of grey in those shadows was very impressive. That's a cinema standard for me.
There are a lot of cameras out there with a lot of really good qualities to them, but I'm always looking for something that's given me either a bit of an edge in one way, but can deliver a day-to-day performance and be a working tool, because at the end of the day, that's what we're looking for. We're looking for a product that's going to make the work I do look good, but actually make my day easier as well. And that's where I believe something like the Panasonic GH5S is going to fit very neatly into my kit of parts.